When I was 19, I went to school to get certified in a certain medical field. I was engaged to my now husband, and we would be getting married in the next year. Classes were held at night, and the first night, I found a seat in the back at a table. Seated at this table was a man in his early 40s. His smile was friendly, so I sat a couple seats down from him. He introduced himself, and we exchanged pleasantries. For the first few weeks, all was fine. We would partner together in class on assignments, and we were both good with the material, so we would get good grades. One night we were in class and he started complimenting me. My hair, eyes, nails. He touched my hand as he complimented my nails, and I started feeling uncomfortable. I said a simple thank you and ignored anything else he said. As the weeks went on, he started saying inappropriate things about my fiancée. He would say he would love to challenge him in a fight to see who won, though he knew he would. At this point, I started to distance myself and sat at a different table. One night on a break, he invited me to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town. He said he would love to take me back to his house after and have some drinks. He said I should leave my fiancée and travel with him. He bragged about the amount of money he had. I reminded him I was engaged and these comments were inappropriate and to stop with them. He laughed it off like he was joking but said, okay. That he didn't want to make me feel uncomfortable. The next few weeks, anytime we saw each other, only school-related topics were discussed. I felt at ease again, and figured he was just a man trying his luck with a younger woman, and I'd put a stop to it. On the last night, we had a pretty difficult final test, and we were allowed to leave after. I was the last to finish and was happy I aced it. In our class, we would walk out the back door to the parking lot. The instructor left through the front door that led to the hallway. I don't know where he was going, and I left out the back. Outside waiting for me was Creepster. I'm not letting you walk to the car by yourself, he said with a smile. Oh, I'm okay, I said back. Come on. I'm parked next to you anyway. At this point, I had no other option. The parking lot was empty except for our cars, and the back door locked from the outside when it shut. I walked, making small talk about the test, trying to get to my car and get it unlocked. When I got there, his car was one space over from mine. His driver's side door was facing my driver's side door. He opened his door first and sat in his car. I had to squeeze past to get to mine. A mistake on my part, but he wasn't leaving first. Your butt looks incredible in those jeans, he said, his voice low and sending shivers down my spine. That's inappropriate. Can't take a compliment. I think you need a spanking. At this point, he grabbed me around my waist and pulled me into his car, onto my stomach across his lap. He hit my butt 3 times. I was screaming for him to stop. He did, and let me go. I got out and got into my car, shaken. He laughed and drove away. I never told anyone. My fiancé was really angry about the inappropriate comments. I knew if I told him, he would have literally hunted this guy down and probably have gotten himself into heaps of trouble. It doesn't end there, though. I used my certification in that field for a little bit and decided it wasn't for me. A couple years later, I applied for a job as an office assistant. I was called in for an interview. When I went to the interview room, there he was, sitting, smiling at me. It was a position to be his assistant. Apparently, he had worked at this place as a director for years, and was currently using his certification for a side job. I didn't even finish the paperwork. I left. Not before hearing him tell me how much he would love to have me as his assistant. That was about 6 years ago. I haven't seen him since, and I prefer to keep it that way. When people don't sit next to me on the bus, I feel both slightly relieved and slightly rejected. When this happens, I always think to myself, do I smell? Do I look weird? Is there something on my face that I'm not aware of? But when a creep decided to take a seat next to you, then hell is a whole different story. For background, I'm a 21-year-old working female and just recently changed my usual 6 to 3 p.m. shift to a 8:30 to 5:31. I lived far away from where I work and it usually takes 2.5 hours to get there, so I always leave home as early as possible so I wouldn't catch the morning traffic, which is a pain in the ass for commuters here in the Philippines. In my old shift, I would always get on the bus at 4 a.m. and at this time, crime is usually rampant, so I'm extra cautious of my surroundings. And I never forget to bring my trusty stun gun with me, just in case shit happens, but so far nothing bad or weird has ever happened. That is, until today. I got to the bus stop and got on the 5:30 a.m. bus. Luckily, it wasn't full yet, so there were a lot of vacant spots, and I happily chose the 3-seater and sat near the window and thought about the damn project I have to finish today. Before I got to my seat though, I've already noticed this big buff guy on the 2-seater opposite to where I sat was staring at me. To be honest, I considered myself an average girl. I mean, I got that not really pretty but not really ugly kind of face. You get the picture. I never even wore skirts, dresses, high heels, or anything revealing unless it's a special occasion. Earlier, I was just wearing an oversized plaid shirt, leggings, large framed glasses, and a bad hair day, so what the hell was he staring at? I got a little conscious though, and decided to stare outside the window as the bus started moving. Not after a few minutes, this guy sat next to me and shit starts. The moment he sat down, I instantly got a bad vibe off him. Why is he sitting next to me when there was literally lots of vacant seats, even at the front? I thought rationally, and maybe he was near his stop and was ready to get off, and then he started staring at me again. This eventually went on for the whole 2.5 hours ride. Well, not 2.5 hours ride of full-on staring, but he would take glances at me when I wasn't looking and pretend to sleep when I tried to catch him staring. I was growing more annoyed and nervous at the same time. But then I decided to study his features, in case this dude plans to sexually harass me or mug me. First of all, he smelled like wet cardboard, and with my motion sickness, it just made things worse for me. 2, I estimated that he was maybe around 40 years old and probably 5'8". And lastly, he was carrying a somewhat low-quality version of a Teenage Ninja Turtle shell prop. Yep. So apparently, my would-be suspect is a Teenage Ninja Turtle fan as well. Now that's interesting, and just fucking great. I frowned and almost had enough when he let out an exasperated sigh, and once again I saw him in the corner of my eye staring at me. I then thought, maybe there's something on my face and he was just shy to point it out. So I opened my compact mirror to check, but saw nothing. I had an idea to pretend to sleep as well, to find out what this asshole is planning, once and for all. I put down my long hair to cover half of my face, and the moment he thought I was asleep, he woke up, and I saw him texting. I took a peek while he was busy and managed to catch some of these words. Sia Bapre. Translation, is this her? Immediately there was a reply. Uyung Maputi. Translation, yes, the fair-skinned one. Alarm bells were ringing in my head, but I still want to think that I'm just being paranoid. And it's not me the text is referring to, but fuck it. I pulled out my stun gun, that is disguised as a mascara tube, and pretended to call my cousin, who's currently a lieutenant in the police force, so that this fucker knew who he's messing with. I saw him tense up when I said lieutenant, and he kinda muttered something I didn't understand. After a few minutes, he stared at me for one last time before getting off the bus. I instantly felt relieved. I don't know what he was up to, but it's obviously bad, so let's not meet again, or I'll zap your balls. This happened 2 years ago in December. I will start off by telling you about myself and my friend, as it will help you understand the situation better. I was 20 years old. I'm 5'4" and weighed about 140 pounds. My friend Jess was 21 and was around 5'6" and weighed about 180 pounds. We both go to university and live pretty close to campus, as well as a number of clubs, and we lived down a pretty shady street. It had a lot of break-ins, wasn't well lit, and was pretty creepy at night. And our house wasn't really the most secure. We started the night out with 3 of us going to one of the local clubs. Jess, myself, and another female housemate called Liz. While we were there, we did get pretty drunk. Liz met up with her boyfriend in the club and told us she would go home with him instead of coming back to the house. By this time, Jess was completely obliterated, could not stand straight. It was just really time for me to take her home. She gets into these states a lot, so I'm used to sobering up if I have to take care of her. Jess, Liz's boyfriend, and I all left the club. We lived about 15 minutes away from this club, and all of us had done this walk before 1,000,000 times, sometimes alone, so we weren't really worried about it. Jess goes to be sick by a bus stop next to the club. Liz and her boyfriend take this as an opportunity to bolt and leave me to take Jess home. As they are walking away, I shouted at them to come back and help, but they literally just ignored me and walked off. I got Jess up off the floor and got underneath her arm to try and help her walk home. This works for about 5 feet when she starts rolling around the place, walking into fences, and like I said, she was just not with it. We finally make it further down the road, where there weren't as many people at all. We were around 5 minutes away from the house, and we stopped for Jess to be sick again. Over the road, there is a police station, but it's not really a used one. I've been there once when I lost my passport, and it wasn't open. Suddenly, a guy appears from around the corner of the station. and comes over to us on the other side of the road. He's foreign but speaks English well, and asks me if I need help. As I could really have done with a hand to get Jess home, as she was getting worse by the minute, I said yes. He smiles, and we both pick Jess up. He gets under her arm on the one side and me on the other. Jess keeps mumbling incoherently, and we finally make some ground, until she falls forward. She sits up against the wall and starts being sick again. I reach down to pick her up. The guy puts his hand out and says, "No, leave her," and offers me a cigarette. I take one and we have a couple of puffs, and then Jess pats my arm and puts her fingers out for the cigarette. So I give it to her. While she was smoking, the guy was just making general chit-chat. And as I didn't know him, I asked if he could take us a bit further down the road, where the top of our street was, and I could take it from there. He suddenly got really strange and said, "No, you smoke with me. You come to my house and we have party." To which I replied, "No, sorry, we need to get home." To this he replies, "Do boys live in your house?" Which was a bit of a red flag. We lived with two other boys, and they weren't a confrontational type at all, but I wasn't going to advertise that. So I lied a little and said, "Yes, we live with 3 boys and my boyfriend is meeting us at the house." He got a bit angry from this response and went, "Boyfriend." I got a bit cagey and suddenly said to Jess, "Jess, can you walk? We need to go home." Jake has texted me and he is meeting us at the door. He wasn't, but I was trying to make it so this guy wouldn't bother trying to get into an unsavory situation. Jess stands up, still mumbling, and the man grabs her hand and says, Wait, we party. You come to my house and we party." At this point, I was ready to get the hell away from this guy because he was really annoying me. So I grab Jesse's arm and tell him to let go. He does, and we leave him standing in the street. Me and Jess continue down to the garage, which is around the corner from our house, and I guide her down our street. This guy comes sprinting, and I mean sprinting, around the corner and shouts, "Party girls, wait up!" By this point, I am like, "Oh, will you just fuck off?" I'm practically dragging Jess down the street to our door, and this guy jogs down to our house. As I'm unlocking the door, he grabs Jess and starts shoving his tongue down her throat. My face automatically dropped, as did my heart and my stomach, and this guy was staring into my eyes as if to say, "Well, what the fuck are you going to do?" While he was abusing her face, and then he started putting his hand up her skirt, and I saw red. So I screamed at him, telling him to fuck off and get the fuck off my friend, and dragged Jess inside the house. I'm standing at the doorway, about to close the door, and he says, "Where is boyfriend?" I come in, we party, and walks towards the door. I'm starting to gather that this party doesn't mean party, and means he's going to try something dodgy on my nearly incapacitated friend, and probably me as well. So I do what a crazy woman would do. I step out, shut Jess in the house, and sprint at him, chasing him down the road, cursing and telling him to get the fuck away from my house, and that I'm going to call the police. When I get back to the house, I'm trying to get Jess into bed and clean her up a bit, and there is a pounding on the door. I open the door with the chain on, and this guy is there. He starts trying to put his arm through the door. At this point, I was full-blown crazy, and I just punched his arm. And when he pulled it out, I slammed the door and shouted I was going to call the police. He shouted, "I come again another time, particle," and left. When Jess woke up in the morning, I told her what had happened, and she didn't remember, and asked her if she wanted to phone the police, to which she declined. Thankfully, we haven't seen him since, but if I did, I would do more than chase him and punch his arm. Okay, so this is my story from 6 years ago, when I was a freshman in high school. I had a friend, let's name her Kim, and she lived on the weirdest street ever. We lived in a suburb in Illinois, and nothing ever happened there, except for on my friend's street. It was like all the weirdos went to live on this specific street. I have more stories about this street too. So one day Kim, like 4 guys, another girlfriend and I, were all hanging out in Kim's room. Her bedroom windows were on the side of the house and faced directly towards the sliding glass doors of her neighbor's house. This is important. The neighbors always kept the curtains closed, and so did Kim for privacy reasons. On this day, however, we had the windows open and the curtains open as well, because it was kinda hot in the room. There were 7 kids in this room, so the breeze made it feel better. Her neighbors were always super nice, an elderly couple. We will call them Tom and Mary. We only talked to Mary, but waved or said hi whenever we saw either of them. Mary worked, but Tom was old and had problems, so he stayed at home. I also practically lived at Kim's house because we were best friends at the time, so I knew Tom and Mary pretty well too. So back to the day when all of us were sitting in the room. I was sitting on one of the 2 beds in the room. I was facing the one window that looked right at Tom and Mary's back door, but I was across the room. Well, I wasn't directly looking at their back door, but one of my friends I was talking to was kind of sitting next to the window. That's when I saw the curtain open, so it caught my attention, because it was never open. Then I saw Tom just standing in the window. I was like, "Hey Kim, Tom is just standing at his door with the doors closed, just like staring at us." She then said, "Just wave to him, he's old and going kind of senile." So that's what I did. I just waved at him. He then waved back and pulled down his pants and his underwear and started jacking off while staring directly at me and still waving at me. I just shrieked. I'm like, "Kim, he is jacking off." That's when everyone just ran to the window, and Tom just ran from the window and shut the curtains. We were all freaking the fuck out. We were home alone because it was the summer, and we called Kim's mom and told her what happened. And she did not believe us at all. Why would we make that up, We just kind of sat there in disbelief, all kind of going back to just talking about what just happened. And I moved from sitting in front of that spot, but out of the other window I could see only a small portion of their door, so I thought I was safe. But about 1 hour later, I saw the curtains open again, and I leaned over and peeked out the window. And there he was again, fully naked this time, jacking off. I got up, shut the windows and curtain, and turned off the lights in the room. Kim was starting to freak out, and we all decided to leave until her parents came home from work. We contemplated calling the police, but Kim's mom was like, "No, you guys are just saying things, don't call the police." So we didn't. A few days went by and nothing happened, so we figured he must have had some mental break that day. But one day, we walked into her room, flip on the lights and sit down, just talking, and Kim's curtains were cracked open. That's when I see Tom in the window again, once again just jacking off. Kim's older sister was home at the time, so we ran and got her. We will call Kim's sister Megan. Well, Megan came in, and Tom was gone, and she was like, "You guys really are crazy. Lay off the drugs." We didn't do drugs, she was just joking around. But then Tom came to the window, just as Megan was walking out, and we're like, "Wait, he came back." So she sees Tom, butt naked, jacking off in the window. She's just standing there like, "Oh my god, holy shit, you guys were right." So she ran to get her camera, because at the time none of her phones had good cameras on them. And she put the camera up, and he booked it. We were only trying to take a picture to show Kim's mom because she didn't believe us, and we figured the police wouldn't believe us either. So then it became days of us trying to either get a picture of Tom or to have Kim's mom see it for herself. However, he ran away anytime he saw an adult, or male of any age, or a camera. We tested the theory of him running whenever he saw a man. So we took those head things hairstylists use to practice hair and put the girl one in the window. And he would come. Then we put the male one, and he ran. It came to the point where he would show up at his door whenever Kim's bedroom light turned on. Why we never contacted the police is besides me. We would just hang out in her room with the lights off, curtains closed, and windows tightly locked. One night we were sleeping, and I was woken up by someone tapping on the window. Now, that was normal for us. We always had friends coming to the window for us to either sneak out, or they would come in, but I saw the silhouette of a man. I start trying to wake up Kim, who was across the room on the other bed that is below the windows he was standing at. And I just threw pillows at her, and she finally woke up and was like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like trying to signal for her to shut the fuck up and look at the window. We quietly booked it out of the room. We didn't want to wake up her mom because she was already getting really sick of us trying to show her Tom. So we just sat in the living room for the rest of the night, scared shitless. Christmas rolled around. Tom was still being a perv, and we continued to try to get someone to believe us. It ended up becoming somewhat of a joke. Other than the one night he came to the window and tapped on it, nothing other than him just jacking off from his house was happening. Then finally one day Kim's mom stayed home from work. And I guess Tom didn't realize, so we stood in Kim's window, waiting for Tom to do his usual routine of jacking off. And we begged her mom to come look. She reluctantly slid into the room on a rolling chair. And she finally saw Tom, doing what Tom does best. Relief finally came over my friend and I, as we saw her face go from annoyed, because we once again dragged her into the room to see, to utter disbelief. And she stood up to go yell at Tom, and he ran away. She didn't know what to do. She kept saying we can't call the cops because Tom's wife, Mary, probably has no idea. Because he only did this when she wasn't home. Once Mary came home, Kim's mom walked right over to their house and told Mary about everything. how it's been going on for months and how she didn't believe us. Sadly, Mary just broke down crying, saying he has been having more problems lately, and she had no idea. If she knew this was happening, she would have stopped it. This was extremely uncomfortable for my friend and I. We felt bad for her because she genuinely had no idea. Mary said she would move, but Kim's mom knew that they were tight on money, so she told them not to. We all liked Mary. She was so nice, so we understood why Kim's mom told them not to move. Mary ended up paying for huge bushes to be put in between the houses and put up her own camera to watch the door. Since then, he never did it again. At least, not to my knowledge. Some of the neighbors found out because Kim's mom likes to gossip, and we found out that we weren't the only ones he did this to. He used to do it to the single mom with 2 young kids across the street. He would stand in front of the window and jack off whenever she came home. It freaked her out so much, she moved across town, but still talked to Kim's mom. Kim and I were still friends for years after, but we don't talk anymore. Just kind of drifted away, so I don't know how Tom and Mary are doing, or if he is even still alive. He was super old, and actually had tumors in his brain. That's why they think he did that perverted stuff to us. I never actually talked to Tom, just a wave here and there before the whole ordeal. So Tom, please let's not ever actually meet. First, I suppose I should supply some context. I am a workout addict. I love to lift and run. I run about 12 miles a week typically, 3 miles 4 separate days. Every day that I run, I take the same trails that surround the lake in my hometown. These trails are relatively secluded. However, they usually have fellow runners and wanderers scattered throughout most times of the day or the evening. I always run through a particular trail that is my personal favorite. It is very near my home, not even a half-mile away. This past week, my local gym was closed due to renovations, so I filled my week with about twice the amount of running as I could not lift. Because of my sudden increase in running, my tendinitis flared up. I always get overzealous and do that to myself. This will come back into play in a bit. Now, I'm hoping I'm able to describe this little picnic area and make sense. At a certain point, the trail guides you to an adorable picnic area. There are parking spaces and picnic tables equipped with grills scattered throughout the lakeside area. Families are grilling here constantly. It is lovely. Behind a certain table, off in one of the more secluded areas, there is a great little dirt trail leading off to a lovely cliff overlooking the lake. I have hung out here, alone, since childhood, as we always have had a rather safe area. I promise this will be important later. Still with me? I hope that all was clear. I'm so spooked right now. I was finishing up what would be my last run before my tendinitis flare-up, thus forcing me to rest. It was dusk, and I was just about to cross through the adorable park and onward through the trail toward home. When I hit the park, I stopped, thinking I might head toward my beloved hidden trail to take a brief rest on my favorite cliff. I am not one to be paranoid, and I am quite adventurous. But after hours on Let's Not Meet, I decided, maybe not, and picked up my speed. I noticed a parked van, but there usually were people there. Didn't think much of it. Maybe a fisherman, and moved along. So thankful for that. The next day I had such brutal pain from overdoing my workouts that I could hardly walk, let alone run. I know, way too overzealous. I took some time off. This morning I wake up to a news update from my news app, stating that police are investigating a dismembered, burned female's body, found at the lake a few hours before I had woken up. I opened the article, only to find worse news, where the body was found burned and gruesomely chopped. It was just in my favorite trail, right between the picnic table and my beloved cliff. Less than 1 mile from my home, the area I run through 4 times a week. The same area where I almost explored just a night or so ago, as I'd done since I was in elementary. The same area that my L&M paranoia had averted me from that evening. With the same sketchy grey van I thought nothing of. They are still investigating. Nobody has been caught yet. I'm less than a mile away here, sitting in my dark house, praying that whoever did this gets caught fast. All I can say is how thankful I am to be safe. I'm also so grateful for not being the poor soul to discover the body, because that could have happened to me quite easily. That is how much time I spend up there, and that is how close it is to me. Still do not have any clue if the van was involved, but it seems odd. Especially since I have a couple friends, female, who used to run in the same area, but stopped after weeks of seeing a grey van conveniently driving by each time they ran. I don't think I need to explain why we shouldn't meet, whoever you are, but congrats on making me terrified of my own backyard. I'm scared to look out a window for too long. Update 1. If you click through to the original story, you will find a link to a Fox News story. This confirms the details. Update 2. So far, I have run into a couple along the trails who claim to have smelled burning flesh days before the body was found. The wife happened to have worked at a crematorium. She said the smell is something unlike any other. This made me even more scared as I was running the trails even more so in those days. The police seem to believe it was a man who has fled to Mexico. Update 3. Visited the site today. Ran into an FBI agent, believe it or not. He was very secretive, obviously, but very friendly. He told me to stay alert and safe, as he has a daughter. It was the middle of the night, maybe 12 or 1 in the morning, and I snuck out to go get a bag of chips or something from the gas station a few blocks away from my house. It was the middle of December, and it was snowing pretty heavily outside. For the record, I was 14 or 15 at the time. I've always been pretty small, at about 5'4" in height and 115 pounds in weight. I'm female, but I've always had short hair and kind of a boyish face. The gas station was completely empty, besides a woman behind the cash register, who I remember had been far too busy with filing her nails to pay too much attention. I'd been picking through some of the chip bags to find something good, when I heard the ding of the door as someone entered the small gas station. I didn't bother to look to see who it was. When I finally found what I was looking for, I turned to start heading towards the refrigerated section for a drink, before seeing the person who had just walked through the door. It was a tall, thin man, maybe 6'2", with brown hair, a red trucker hat, and a short, scruffy beard. He looked like he was in his late 30s or early 40s, I was surprised that I didn't recognize the man. I lived in a small mountain town, and everyone knew everyone. Oddly enough, he was wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt and shorts, despite it being freezing cold outside. His shirt and pants were covered in grass stains, as if he had just been working on a lawn or something. He turned to me and smiled a toothy grin before moving away from the door to the refrigerated area so that I could grab what I needed. I knew I shouldn't have seen anything wrong with this. Something about the grin and the way his eyes looked me over was already kind of a red flag. I've always been a very nervous and paranoid person. I moved in and opened the door, quickly grabbing a drink and backing off. Before I could turn away, I heard the man's raspy voice as he spoke to me. "Hey, you look familiar," the man said. He had a somewhat southern accent, which wasn't uncommon considering where I lived. Yeah? I responded, not sure what to say to him. He introduced himself as Thomas, before leaning against the door. "Why is a young man like you doing out this late?" he asked. Again, I wasn't sure what to say. I wasn't a boy for one thing, but I didn't bother to correct him. I was just getting a snack. I responded, trying to inch my way away, trying to give off the hint that I didn't want to talk. Yet, the man just trailed behind me. "Do you know my daughter?" he asked me, cutting off one of the aisles. "Well, who is your daughter?" I asked shakily in response. The man frowned at me, his eyes narrowing in my direction. He refused to tell me her name, claiming that he didn't want boys touching his daughter. I was confused by the sudden change of mood, so I didn't say anything else. I started making my way towards the register before he cut me off again. "Do you need a ride? It's cold out there," he said, getting uncomfortably close. At this point, I could smell the alcohol on Thomas's breath. It made me very uncomfortable. "No, thank you," I said, trying to move around him. He insisted, and yet again, I refused. I moved to try and push past him, bumping into a metal shelf. A can of chips fell off the shelf, hitting the floor. The lady behind the register had looked up from what she was doing, noticing me and the man. "Are you ready to check out?" she asked me, glaring at Thomas. I nodded, and the man moved out of my way. I paid for the chips and drink before thanking the woman and moving out of the gas station. But it didn't end there. When I began my walk down the snowy road, I saw the man get into his truck before getting out a minute later. I was already quite a ways away when he began walking in the same direction I was. I would have called someone for help at this point, but I didn't have a phone at the time. I quickened my pace, and eventually, he turned around and went home. I don't want to think what would have happened if the man would have kept following me. So Thomas, I don't think we should meet again. This is a very recent occurrence. I have autism to begin with, and I'm female. I've seen a few other ladies on here with my disorder post their experiences, so I figured it was time I did as well. I'm 17 and I live in the midst of a farming community, native reserve town. As such, my town is full of drunks, rednecks, and drug abusers and a collection of misfitted kids who all want to be gangsters. I'm one of the small percentage of white girls in my town, especially at my age. I'm chunky and a bit unassuming, and usually very polite. But if I get emotional over something or see some kind of injustice, I speak out against it and lash out. This has given me trouble in the past. I haven't lived in this area that long either. Maybe about almost 45 years. I grew up in another small town further north, closer to a couple of the cities and away from reserves. When I lived in that town, my mouth and lack of understanding about social skills got me into heaps of trouble. It included prank phone calls, bullying, mind games to make me look stupid, even threats of sexual violence against my person. We moved here half because of this situation I was in, and half for a new company my dad is currently employed in. Now a bit more so you understand what the exact situation is. I don't have very many friends here, being white, clean, non-smoking, and awkward at social skills. But recently I made one that I will call Carrie. Carrie lives at a youth assessment center, for reasons I won't get into. But she's been through a lot of awful stuff, and we began to hang out after she started to go to my church. She's been helping me exercise in exchange for company on the 2 hours a day she's allowed to roam the town. Now on to the story. Carrie and I had gone to the midway that comes with the rodeo, each on a separate day. When we meet up a few more days later this past week, she was mad and upset. Apparently this guy that she knows who was dating this girl she also knows was flirting with other women at the midway, including Carrie herself. His then girlfriend got wind of this from a bunch of her so-called friends and family, who all said it was Carrie that came onto him. Thus began some pretty nasty bullying, to which I got to witness on Facebook. Being me, I hated bullying because of what I went through, and not thinking properly, I used my messenger app to find her and sent her a message, telling her to quit, and that she was being juvenile. Because really, if this guy felt the need to flirt with other girls, he was clearly overcompensating for something. That was a really stupid idea. Instantly I got backlash of her, calling me a hoe and accusing me of being one of the girls that came onto her boyfriend. I haven't even met this guy. And if I did, and he tried that, I would have rebuffed him anyways because boys aren't my thing, to put it like that. I tried to show her, but she got increasingly rude. And she was also making me stoop to her level, so I just muted the conversation. Another big mistake, as I thought I blocked her. A day later, yesterday in fact, I started getting messages from her again. Carrie has since blocked her, so I was the unfortunate person she was demanding from. This is basically parts of her conversation. Her. Look, shut the fuck up and tell her to message me, okay? If you don't want to be on my bad side, I suggest you tell her to message me. Me. No, I won't. Her. Then you will be on my bad side. Me. Okay. At this point, I didn't really know what to say because one, I am not letting this chick have access to my friend, and second of all, she's threatening me because I'm not doing what she asks. Her. This shall be fun. Me. All I said was no, I will not do what you ask. Her. All I gotta say is watch your back. Her. This shall be fun. Her. I love seeing people in pain. After this, I blocked her. This time I made sure to. This all again happened yesterday. And despite her threats, I did go out. But Carrie is a bit worried. She knows this girl and told me that she got a record for past violent acts. She did get the police involved, apparently, but right now there's nothing they can do. My parents do know. They're disappointed in my methods, but proud of me for protecting, standing up for Carrie. So far, it sounds like her threats may be all hot air, but we'll see. If anything happens, I will update. But I would love some advice on what to do from here. Update. Thanks for all the advice on what to do, and also reminding me not to get involved. Yes, I should know better. And I know my reason isn't an excuse, but having Asperger's makes me very impulsive and socially inept. 2 traits of the disorder that I try to curb. I have also since then taken screenshots of the threats, but I will not post them on here since that would just be wrong in itself. Now what happened today makes me very suspicious that this girl is making good on her threat. I walk my dog Mandy on sporadic occasions whenever I have the energy or time to. Mandy is a golden retriever black lab cross, but she looks more golden. She's usually a very sweet and people-friendly dog, and well-behaved on her leash. Today I was walking my usual route around the Catholic school that I attend. It's still summer break, so I'm not in session at the moment, when this white Ford truck pulled up ahead of me, and a couple of guys, maybe a year older than me, that I didn't recognize got out. I didn't really think much about it, since the basketball pad at my school is a hangout during summer. However, Mandy started growling and barking and yanking at her leash. She does this for 2 reasons. Either she sees a cat or another dog, starts barking at her. But I didn't see either. The 2 guys, both native, were approaching me, and suddenly Mandy got free and took off after them. I will tell you now that she's only done this one other time when I was younger, to protect me and my sister from a neighbor's very aggressive territorial pit bull that tried to attack us when it broke loose. Another story for another time. She raced towards the guys, and I saw that they dropped something before getting into their truck and sped off. When I got up to where Mandy was, I started scolding her because I confusedly thought that she had just scared off a couple guys who wanted to play basketball. On the ground, though, I found a knife, and it hit me, and I started crying. These 2 guys had a knife and were coming towards me, not entering the grounds to go to the basketball pad, but coming right up towards me. I didn't have my cell phone on me, stupid me, but I went home and told my mom. We went back out together, but by that time the knife was gone. Mom wants me to stay inside for a few days, and I've agreed. If this girl seriously is making good on her threat, then what am I supposed to do if I don't have the evidence that something could have happened? More bad stuff happened, guys. I'm home alone with my dad for the weekend, but he goes out to help my uncle in a nearby hamlet remodel his kitchen. Last night, he was out late and I was watching The Lone Ranger. I love Johnny Depp as Tonto, and I heard a gunshot. I know what I was watching, and I really didn't think about it. But this morning, I went outside to let my dog out for her run, and found shattered pieces of metal on the concrete and a funny-looking dent. You can guess what it is. I contacted the police and they took it into evidence. But with the thing shattered, bullets and concrete don't mix. And Dad wants me to stay inside today and not go anywhere. And you know what? The police here suck because when I showed them the screenshots, they just shrugged and said, "You really can't do anything as long as she isn't coming into direct contact with you." I hate to sound racist, but they're native too, and the police around here aren't known for their proficiency. So I'm at a crossroads, because someone shot at my house last night, and the day before I got approached by two men armed with a knife. This had better end soon. P.S. I also warned Carrie, who is living in a secure building that houses the YAC. They're out of town on a camping trip, so she hasn't been affected by anything. Also, I know how to swing a frying pan and where the kitchen knives are in case anything else happens. A car has been circling our house for the past 2 days. A white Camaro of sorts, I think. It just whizzed by, with screeching tires the first night, Saturday. And on Sunday it was a really slow crawl before zooming away. I'm praying this is just a coincidence, and none of this has anything to do with this girl's threat. I haven't seen the white car today, Monday, and we're leaving on Friday. To where I will not say, but it's for my younger sister's sport. I'll be looking forward to getting away for a while, to where it can't affect me. Hotel, family, and plenty of things to do for a few days will probably help me in the long run. Probably. I'm home now, guys, from my short vacation. I'm sorry for taking so long to keep you posted, but I'm still being harassed. We came home to find broken beer bottles all over our lawn and driveway. Our dog, luckily, is unharmed, but she's been tense and barking more. Last night someone drove by with their engines gunning and threw a brick at our truck, denting the taillight. My dad has almost had it, and so have I. I definitely know that this girl is a fucking psycho, and I wish I could confront her myself and tell her off. Something stupid, I know, but I'm just so fed up. School is starting next week, so when this happens, hopefully the juvenile delinquents that have been bothering us will lay off once they're back in school. I have reason to believe that from the age of the guys from my first encounter, and the age of the girl that's been threatening me, they are from a public school on the opposite side of town. Over there, compared to my school, it's where all the supposed gang members go. So if this keeps up into the school year, and if my suspicions are correct, my dad is going to call the principal, a friend of his, and get this girl questioned by police. I grew up going to a private American school in a foreign country in Europe, which I shall not name. The school was situated kind of in the middle of a big hill, and even further above the school was something really special. An abandoned prison. Now, as if that was not shady enough, bordering the abandoned prison was a real prison. There was kind of like a wall separating the real prison and the abandoned one. So, anyway, us being teenagers, we decided to find a way to break into the abandoned part. We had already gotten beyond the second layer of the wall. There were a total of 3. And the wall ran all the way around with barbed wire in many places. One lunch break, I heroically managed to tear down a huge section of the wall during lunch. But the next day we arrived, and it was patched up by someone. That didn't stop us though. We climbed on through anyway, and decided to do some exploring. Now this happened over the course of many months, and it took us ages to work up the courage to finally get inside. A bunch of us were doing AP 2D art, and had our cameras with us at all times to get some shots. Half of my best work came from this prison. But one day, an event happened that made all of us swear to never go back. We took pictures of notebooks and logs we found, but I won't post them due to keeping the country unknown. So, as months went by, we got more and more confident about wandering about the prison. We never went too deep, and we were always scared of getting close to the wall with the real prison because there were always security guards. Sometimes we would run into some gypsies, scrapping for metal. Sometimes a random homeless person or two, but nothing ever dangerous. Once a couple of guys got busted by security, and we didn't go back for weeks. But eventually we learned the schedule of the guards and befriended the homeless who hung around there. So we were pretty comfortable. 2 years went by of some exploring here and there, until one night a friend and I decided to go there to do some late night shooting. We dressed up, organized our things, and met by one of the holes of the entry at midnight. We had videos of us going through some of the sections of the prison at night, but we deleted them out of fear. We never wanted to have anyone know what happened this night, and thought the videos could be traced. It was really dark in the depths of the prison, so the reason we were filming was to use the flashlight on our phones. This was a while back and you couldn't just press a button to get the light, but had to film something. Our goal tonight was to get as high up as we could. There were at least something like 10 floors, and almost all the staircases we had found during our daily exploring were sealed off. If we spent lunch breaking one down, the next day it would be repaired again. The prison was huge and had many staircases all over the place. I will have access to the pictures in a few months if you want to see all the rooms. Now, most of the rooms were fairly large. Each floor was completely different to the previous one, and it was very hard to tell what went on here. From what we could gather, it was some sort of a labor factory the prisoners were forced to work in. We found some rooms completely full of shoe soles. Another floor had a long hallway, and each room was vividly painted in different patterns. Some rooms had a lot of mattresses stacked on top of each other. You get it. A whole lot of creepy-ass rooms with random creepy-ass shit. Every new floor we explored was a totally new surprise, and it kept becoming more and more difficult to find ways to go higher up. But eventually we found it, and that's what we came there to do that night. Get to the roof. As I mentioned, this prison was on a hill, so the view was bound to be fantastic, and we thought at night the guards will have a harder time spotting us. So back to the night. We kept getting deeper and deeper, and it got darker and darker. There were dripping noises everywhere around us, and we couldn't tell if we were alone. We got to our desired staircase, and as we climbed up, there became fewer and fewer windows until we were climbing up into pitch darkness. I'm shaking as I'm even typing this, remembering the pure terror I felt. Nonetheless, It was the only unsecured entrance, so we kept climbing and climbing. Things started to get weird. The stairs were in the form of a zigzag with no railing, so you could fall down the middle. To get to this staircase, you had to go through a long dark hallway, so once you're at the bottom of the stairs, there is almost no light. Soon we began to realize that at the end of each zigzag, there were these holes in the wall. To get through one, you'd have to pull yourself up into it, because it was just a tiny slit at the top. We flipped a coin, and it was decided I was to go through. I wish I never had. I pray to God I never had. I crawled through and hopped inside into a box-like confinement with no windows or anything. You couldn't fully stand up. You had to either lay down or squat. I looked around and found pornography plastered all over the walls of this place, as well as tissues and other disgusting stuff. Injection needles were among one of the things there too, and I believe I have a picture of that somewhere. That wasn't the worst part though. The worst part was when I took a look at a notebook laying on the ground. The writing was in a foreign language which I could read, and it documented a worker's logs. There was a name followed by a sign-in and sign-out timestamp. The most recent entry was made 2 days ago. 2 fucking days ago. I rushed out of that space like my life depended on it, and told my friend we've got to get going. While I was inside, my friend noticed that there was one of these slits on every level, and that they were numbered and had a placeholder for a tag. They were cells. We noped the hell out of there and began climbing down when I responded to my friend. It's almost 1 a.m. and we need to go now before it's too late. We were going to go to a club after this. Teenagers. It took me some time, but I finally persuaded him to go back up and make it to the roof, then leave. We went up and up and up until finally we saw light. Delighted, we burst through the door, completely without thinking, and began expressing our relief in cries of joy. We felt like we had conquered the worst part, and completely relaxed. Everything was going great until suddenly my friend freezes in his tracks and tells me to shut the hell up right now and get to the staircase. Panicked, I asked him what he's on about. The staircase we had just come from had like a little house over it, if that makes sense. And he was looking at something over the edge of the corner. Then I hear another voice, which is definitely not my friend's. We were both these 2 fairly well-off kids from American upbringings, and the man was speaking a foreign language. Luckily I could understand it. But we like to frequently pretend that I did not. Just to fuck with the locals and spy on people. He was used to me routinely pretending I don't understand a word, so when the man said something he just stayed quiet and motioned that I keep my mouth shut. My friend was signaling for me to get to the staircase when I heard the man yell, "Don't move," in the foreign language. I froze dead and didn't know what to do. 5 men come from around the house thingy into my sight. 2 men were standing. The others were sitting on the curb of the roof. One push, and they'd tumble down to their death. Now, these guys looked serious. Pumped arms, sweatpants, bandanas, and for the best part, swastikas on their arms. The prison had a lot of racists, anti-Jew, anti-immigrant, anti-people in general type of stuff going on. This we never expected, though. The man motions at me and yells, "Come here." I nervously tell him in English that I do not understand. I don't know how I thought this would help, but I speak quite a bit of German, and I suppose in my logical brain I thought maybe they would do less harm to two Germans. By luck, my friend happened to be Swiss and spoke it fluently. The man yells to us, "What language you speaking?" I replied, "Deutsche." My friend looks over at me panicking, desperate to know what our next move should be. "Ah, Germans." And the group laughs. I hear one of the men say to the others in the foreign language, "They've seen the products." The head of the gang looks at us and comes closer. It was really dark, so I couldn't see what they had circled around, but there were black gym bags at their feet. "Come closer," he says to both of us. We come up closer to the group. The man starts asking us questions in English. Who we are, why we are there. He then started asking personal questions, our full names, where we live, etc. The questions were clearly directed at making it easier to find out as much about us as they can. Neither of us had money, but we both had our iPhones on us. We had no idea what they planned for us next. One of the sitting guys gets up and asks me, "Did you see anything?" No, I shakily reply. Then he comes to my friend and asks him the same. For a brief moment, I glanced over at the bags and I suddenly wished I would be anywhere but there. Hell, I would rather be in that cell than there. I wish we had never come back. I think you can guess what was in the bags. Guns. Not just one gun, guns. As in bags and bags of what were probably illegal firearms. In a smaller bag to the side there was a ton of rolled up cash. We just stumbled into an illicit firearm deal. The guys now started discussing amongst each other about what they were going to do with us. They didn't know that I understood every single word. One of them kept pleading, "They're just stupid kids. And if they rough us up a bit, we won't tell anyone." Another one insisted they take us to Gustav. I'm happy I never met Gustav. Meanwhile, I was trying to come up with an escape plan. The real prison was visible from where we were standing, but by the time the security guards from there got up here, we would be dead. The staircase where we came from was pitch black, and we would stumble our way down and probably die. Either way, we end up dead. So I go for plan C. Mr. Ringleader says that one of them should walk us home to see where we really live and threaten us if we tell. That's when I had a better idea. The roofs. We could run back down the stairs, but the abandoned prison complex was huge, and basically many buildings of different sizes all near each other. You could hop down from roof to roof and escape via that way. Just as one of them starts arguing about taking us to Gustav, one of their phones rings, and I take that as my cue. I scream, "Follow me," to my friend, and began descending down the roofs. Now, I know this is stupid logic, but I thought they'd never shoot us near a real prison. It's too risky. It really wasn't too difficult. We just kept jumping on a lower and lower building, and eventually we were down. Our feet hit the ground, and we began running through the grounds. Since I knew it quite well, I knew exactly where to run to escape to a main road on the other side of the wall. I suddenly heard men yelling in the background and the sound of barking dogs. Security from the real prison must have seen us running and came to see who was there. I screamed to them in the foreign language, "There's men, and they've got guns." It seemed they already knew we were not the primary concern, as they ran in the direction we came from, and not where we were going. We didn't stop running until we reached the city center, and we didn't return to the prison. We never reported anything that happened, and have no follow-up on who the men were. Illegal drugs and stuff were common where we were living. Never thought to find guns. To be honest though, it wasn't the first time we'd heard about weapons deals going down. It's hushed up, but not that hard to get your hands on where we lived. We didn't go back, needless to say. To think that roof could have been the last thing I saw. Or Gustav's apartment. I first moved out of my parents' house in 2008. I was 20. I had a 2-year-old daughter. And gosh darn it, I wanted to assert my independence and prove that I wasn't living with my parents because I couldn't live on my own. Overall, it was a relatively dumb idea. I moved to a cool part of town next to campus, next to one of our arts districts, but in a really beautiful neighborhood I always wanted to live in. But it was 15 minutes away from the suburb my parents lived in, and since I worked nights, I'd spend way too much time driving back and forth, so my mom would babysit on the nights I worked. Despite the inconvenience, the neighborhood did not disappoint. I was in a small apartment building, right in the middle of beautiful Victorian houses. Houses that sell for upwards of over $1 million. Lovely neighbors, quiet area, no problems with anyone ever. It felt safe. There was a neighborhood watch and everything. I think there was only one incident of car break-ins in my 2 years there. And even then, they just hit cars that were unlocked. No smashed windows or damaged property. I was upstairs at the end of the building. There's no reason for anyone other than me or my people to be near my door or window. The guy who lived right next to me, who I've always referred to as neighbor, was a quiet guy who immersed himself in school and work. He never had people over, and wasn't known for drunken antics. This story takes place right around the end of my 2nd year there. 2 years of nothing remarkable other than the aforementioned car break-ins. Around May of 2010, I was outside cleaning the glass on the door and the windows, and decobwebbing the cheap black iron patio furniture I got at Target. The windows were tall. I am short. In order for me to clean the upper portions of the window, I had to stand on one of the chairs and reach. That's when I noticed something. Lip prints. Well, just one set of lips. On the window. Pretty high up too. I couldn't reach them if I wasn't on the chair. At the time I was mostly annoyed, thinking maybe neighbor had had friends over, and one of his drunk friends kissed my window. Because who else would even be near my window? After that, I always made a point to see if the lips showed up again. They didn't, so it confirmed my drunk neighbor theory in my mind. Now, this is where everyone groans and rolls their eyes. Trust me, I know. I know. I was young and dumb, but even that's not an excuse. Because of where I lived, neighborhood-wise and within the building, there were plenty of nights I'd leave the blinds open. And not only that, but the way the apartment was set up, an L shape. Living room, kitchen and bedroom, all in a straight line back, and then the bathroom off to the side of the bedroom. My daughter's room was more towards the inside of the bedroom, and mine was at the end of the straight line back. I liked the way the light would come through the trees in the morning. It was really a beautiful sight, and I liked waking up to it. I know it was a dumb choice. And here's another thing that makes me want to curl up and die. Many nights my daughter, at this point in the story 4 years old, would sleep in my bed until she didn't, which was probably around the 4th of July if I remember correctly. She attributed this to the tall man watches me sleep. I don't like it. But in my defense, this kid was known for saying some really creepy shit. One time she told me a ghost of a baby pig, named Baby Pig Ghost, would talk to her, and he was sad because people tore him apart. And she was sad because the other ghost pigs wanted to hurt me. So her saying something like that was super creepy, but I didn't think there was literally a tall man watching us sleep. But to appease her, and because I was thoroughly creeped out by what she said, I'd kinda leave the blinds down at night. Most nights I was up until 3 or 4 because of my work schedule. I figure she was just being weird again, but the imagery sticks with you, I guess. And on to the night that put me in therapy and turned me into the most paranoid person you could ever meet. It was early August. I was asleep in my bed. I went down pretty early. My bedroom door was open like it always was. I was asleep facing the living room like I always was. The blinds were down and closed, like they had been for a month. But the string was wonky, so one portion of the blinds always had about an inch or two of space from the windowsill. All the lights inside were off, but the patio light was on outside. I randomly woke up and looked down at my phone to see what time it was. Just a few minutes after 3. I was annoyed, thinking there's no way I'm going to fall back asleep. And that's when I saw it. Outside of the window, I saw the silhouette of a tall person through the blinds. He was standing completely still. He was standing so still for so long that I started to think I was crazy. I thought I was seeing things. And that's when he sat in one of the chairs outside. I was completely frozen in terror. I couldn't move a muscle. Texting or calling for help seemed out of the question. I was afraid he'd see the light from my phone or hear me. But then again, he sat there for so long that I convinced myself I just saw a shadow and that nothing was there. And then again, he moved. He stood back up and turned around. He stepped closer to my window and paused. He got right up to the window and paused again. And that's when he leaned over and was looking through the 2 inches of space between the windowsill and the bottom of the blinds. He stood there for longer than what seemed feasibly possible, in that bent over position. His head didn't move. He just stood there looking while I kept my eyes mostly shut. I thought if there was any way he could possibly see me with my eyes open, looking at him, it'd make him snap and he'd bust in. Eventually he stood back up and walked out of view. Then I heard the screen door creak open. I can only assume he tried the doorknob, but thankfully, I wasn't so much of a dumb shit that I left my door unlocked. Then I heard the door shut again, and after that there was nothing. After I heard the door shut, and I didn't see him come back to the window, I checked my phone. It was 3:48 a.m. I quietly slid out of bed and crawled toward the bathroom and threw up. I waited until the sun came up before I called the cops. I can't explain why I was so afraid to move or make noise until then, but I was paralyzed with fear in the bathroom until then. 2 officers showed up, and I stepped outside to talk to them. And it came as little surprise to see that the lip prints were on the window again, roughly in the same spot. I have a photo on my MacBook, but at this point it's out of commission, so I can't access it right now. The police took their photos, the report was filed. I never slept there again. With the police report, I was able to cancel the lease renewal I had signed, and I moved back in with my parents.